and welcome back to breaking down Better Call Saul. And in this installment, I'm going to be talking about Season 3 from 2017. I didn't mention in the previous video that Season 2 came out in 2016. That's going to bug me, but it really doesn't fucking matter. Anyway, so 10 episodes again, as usual. We got episode 1, Mabel. Episode 2, Witness. Episode 3, Sunk Costs. Episode 4, Saprosito. Episode 5, Chicanery. Episode 6, Off-Brand. Episode 7, Expenses. Episode 8, Slip. Episode 9, Fall. And Episode 10, Lantern. So the show opens with another flash forward to the Gene Tavik storyline. And we see Jimmy as Gene working in Cinnabon and collapsing. And we find out the continuation of that scene the next year in season 4. We see Mike, who has been left this note of don't take out Hector. So he takes his car to why do words fail me? Not a junkyard, but like a car lot. Like a little junkyard car lot kind of thing, a scrapyard. That's what it is, a scrapyard. And he just takes it. It's like the end of the conversation. Like he just strips his car apart completely, trying to find out how someone knew where he was going and what he was doing. And then finally, he goes back. He's given up, but then he gets a touch of inspiration. He just twists off the gas cap, and there it is. There's a tracker inside his cap. Great scene. Chuck obviously now has the tape of Jimmy, and there's a cool, like, because in season 2, Jimmy, like, there's like a curtain of that silver, like, space blanket stuff, and Jimmy, like, just flows through it, and we stay with Chuck. But in season 3, we see Jimmy coming out from the other side. It's a nice little kind of, different perspective kind of thing. And Chuck's got this tape, and I think he makes Howard aware of it, and he also, so he makes Howard aware of it. And he also kind of he makes Ernesto, his assistant, aware of it, but like pretending it's accidental, where he's just like, oh, can you just put some batteries in the tape recorder? So he puts the batteries in, and it starts playing the confession. He's oh no, don't listen to that. He wants Ernesto to know, because he knows Ernesto is going to go to Kim and speak to Jimmy and tell him about it. At this point, Jimmy and Kim have now joined forces the way that he always wanted, but not quite the way he wanted. It's Wexler and McGill, but they're two separate law offices under the same building. Split the costs of all that kind of thing. They bring in the receptionist, who becomes his receptionist in Breaking Bad. I forget her name, unfortunately. She's a funny character. I like her in the show, and I've forgotten anything of her in Breaking Bad. I haven't got to those episodes yet. That's gonna be intriguing, because I'm currently rewatching Breaking Bad right now, and I'm a few episodes away from Saul. It's gonna be so different to see him now with all that added context. Anyway, so they have their own offices and stuff, and Chuck lures Jimmy, and really by like pretending that Ernesto was had accidentally found out this stuff. He knew that word would get back to Jimmy, and Jimmy finds out there's a tape, storms into Chuck's. And at this point, Chuck has already got Howard there. He's got this private investigator or private security there to witness what he knows. Again, Chuck is playing Jimmy. Chuck is out slipping Jimmy. Like, he's just perfectly orchestrated this. Not only has he got the confession on tape, which Howard says, like, well, it's not going to hold up. There's ways they can dismiss this, but Chuck wants to really nail Jimmy's balls to the board, and so Jimmy comes in. He's like, you taped me, and he like rips the tape out and he smashes it up, and that's when Howard and the guy go, oh, hang on a minute, and Jimmy's like, and they've got him, and so and this was when we first get the reveal of Los Pollos Hermanos, and actually I loved the moments where you first see Gus, and this is where Mike is kind of like staking out I forget why Mike is staking out Los Pollos Hermanos. He gets Jimmy to go in. I think Mike's trying to, so Mike goes through the whole saga of finding out the you know, what the tracker, the make of the tracker is that was following him around, and he realizes people are following him now, and this is Gus's men, which it's not explicitly stated at this point, and I think he goes to the vet, the vet guy who at some point is kind of brought in. I guess it's season 1, 2, or 3, but he's the guy who, you know, has got connections, and Mike through him gets him to get him one of these trackers, and he takes it apart, I think, and then he starts tracking the other guys, and he's following them around, seeing what their routes are. And he's realized that Los Pollos Hermanos is this hub of some sort of activity. So he gets Jimmy to go into the restaurant. And so we as an audience are expecting Gus, right? And Jimmy's there, and he's looking, and then he moves over, and he's not doing a very good job of being, like, you know, inconspicuous. And he's looking around, and then we just see eventually in the background just this guy in a white shirt just sweeping up, and it's Gus, and Jimmy's like watching this guy, and the guy bins his food in one of those, like, the food bins in a fast food place where you push the kind of the swing up, and so Jimmy kind of sticks his head inside, and he's looking around to see if this guy dropped anything, if there's like a money drop or something, and then you hear Gus's, "Can I help you?" And Jimmy, pure like brilliance, just takes his watch off, throws it in the bin, comes out, goes, "Oh yeah, I just dropped my watch in there." It's just fantastic. I love the way that they throw in all these little details that are just so fun to watch Jimmy snake his way out of anything, you know. And Gus is like, "Oh, no problem. Let me just take the bin out and we'll get that for you." And, you know, it's Gus, you know, and again it makes sense to the story, the way that they've worked this thing in. So it was very cool to see Gus back, and the way they revealed him was, it was, again, it wasn't the kind of like the Tuco reveal. It felt more natural, so it was really built up to, you know. And so now Mike, he kind of is on a collision course with Gus, and there's that great moment, I think, in the third episode, Sunk Costs, where Mike goes out into the middle of nowhere, and you just see like his car just above the edge of the road. There's a bit of like heat kind of distortion, and you just see Mike's head just coming out. It's such a cool badass shot. And then he goes out and he meets Gus, you know, and it's this really cool first meeting between these two massive characters from Breaking Bad. And I would say, I mean, I'd have to, again, once I rewatch Breaking Bad, it'll give Better Call Saul a new context. I'll have more of a refreshed memory on that, but it feels to me like there's definitely more Mike in Better Call Saul than there is Breaking Bad, but I feel like there's even more of the Mike and Gus relationship in this show than there was in Breaking Bad. But you get the building up of it, and the building up of trust, and the pushbacks with Mike and Gus, and kind of the disagreements, and the respect, and all this kind of stuff. And this it's this amazing sequence in, I think, the third episode, where Mike gets, and I think I'm not sure which episode, I think it's in the season, where it's a really great one-er, and they stitched a cut in there, I noticed, but you see like a truck like coming into like the border control, and it's like a one shot of the truck coming in and getting out, and all the guards going through all the trucks and the vans, and kind of, you know, making sure that the ice cream truck, you know, which is full of all the ice cream and lollies and stuff, it's the Salamanca front. They make sure that you know, there's nothing untowards in any of these trucks. So we get that kind of setup established, and then later on we see Mike with this very elaborate plan. He gets a pair of sneakers, throws it onto an electrical wire, and then when one of Hector's trucks come in, he's off in the distance with a sniper rifle, and so it's the sneakers are on a wire above one of the Salamanca trucks at the point where they stop the truck to get out and get their guns back out from this hole in the ground. And at this point in time, when they're by the hole, Mike starts firing off his sniper rifle in the distance. Now the Salamanca, like, you know, they're not Salamanca family members, but the heavies, they drop to the ground like, what the fuck, someone's shooting. And then Mike shoots again. And then he shoots again. And then they're like, oh, hunters. Mike shoots again, just like into the air. They're like, okay, it's cool. No one's firing at us. It's just brilliant. And so they get into the car, and then Mike shoots the sneaker, and it's got cocaine in it, and it feathers down this fine dust of cocaine onto their truck. So they go through the border control, and it's just like caked in coke. Well, it's like very fine dust, and it's just an amazing, like, the way that all came together. I just love all that shit. It's so satisfying. And I've thought over the past few seasons of rewatching this show, I've thought, wouldn't it be cool to just make a Mike cut, like Better Call Saul, at least from Mike's perspective, just all the Mike scenes. Like, would it still work as a show? Like, probably not with the pacing and stuff, but it'd be really interesting. But I just love all the Mike shit. I really do. So episode 4 of season 3, Saprosito, they kind of called this in the writers' room, or referred to it as the unofficial, kind of official 63rd episode of Breaking Bad. This is an incredible episode, and this is where season 3 really shines for me. Is there's just so much good shit going on. The Chuck and Jimmy stuff is at like such a fever pitch in those first couple of episodes. The fallout from the confession, then the Mike stuff, and meeting Gus, for the first time in this show, and then this 4th episode, which is all about Don Eladio and Balsa, and and seeing the kind of the genesis. We've already seen some of that backstory, and Don Eladio's his little mansion there out in Mexico, but you get like this the Hector stuff where Hector comes in, and he's got like all his money like rolled up in like elastic bands, and he's just like, I've started up this ice cream restaurant front, and it's we've modeled the mascot after you, Don Eladio. And Don Eladio's like, oh, that's cute, and then some other men come in, and they're like, this is from Fring, and it's just like these big blocks of cash, and you just see Hector's balls wrung out to dry, wrung out or hung out to dry, and he is pissed. And Eladio's like, yeah, no more elastic bands. I want all my money to come in like this, and it's like it directly follows on from that scene in Breaking Bad, the flashback where we see Hector shoot Max, like hinted at as being Gus's lover, and if not, someone he loved, and you see the genesis of this bitter hate between the two. But at that point in time, Gus was like, kind of wet behind the ears, like this kind of young up and comer, kind of trying to break into the cartel business, and Hector was kind of the man underneath Don Eladio. And now Fring is he's really making Hector look bad, and so you get a lot of that backstory there, which is just really fucking cool. It feels like an episode of Breaking Bad for the most part. And an interesting note is that with the whole like the cocaine truck thing that Mike did, Gus attempts to pay him for that, and Mike refuses the money, and so it's like it's the genesis of Mike very slowly being brought in as Gus's guy, and at the beginning he's not looking to be Gus's guy, and there's all sorts of stuff that is too complicated for me to remember in terms of like Hector and Gus are being ordered to work together, and kind of there's lots of things going on, and neither of them are happy about it, and then Gus agrees to it, but he wants to agree to it because he's setting something, like there's all sorts of stuff going on. But on the Jimmy and Kim front and the truck thing, and it was cool to see a scene where Jimmy calls in Mike to repair something in Chuck's house, and just uses the drill, the electric drill, and he's like, no power tools, and Mike's like, well, that takes a couple of hours and takes it into a 2-day job, and Chuck's like, oh, fine, I'll just, okay, and he keeps using the drill, and he's just stood there like, waiting for Chuck to go upstairs, and he starts taking pictures, which comes into play in the 5th episode, and basically Kim has decided she's going to help Jimmy with the Chuck situation. And that's where Kim is really starting to, she's everything's going well. She's working on Mesa Verde and stuff, and but she's also helping Jimmy doing this stuff that is a bit nefarious, and she knows that Jimmy is guilty of this thing, but she's going to try and find a way to get him out of it anyway. And so he's really appreciative of that, but he's also a bit skeptical at times, I think, and and that's just so the Kim and Jimmy dynamic is maybe the most interesting thing of the entire show, because it's hard to define it, because it always seems shifting and amorphous. Like I never, and I think it's the brilliance of both of their performances, Bob Odenkirk and Ray Seahorn, that there's so much subtlety at play, and I never quite know exactly, like, is that, and you can see it in a lot of things, that the facial expressions, but then they do something and say, oh, why are they doing that? And eventually it does get revealed, and it might take a whole season, but I love that even revisiting it, I'm like, now why did she do that again? When she said that, and it's just fascinating. I love it, and I think they're both phenomenal actors, and I love their relationship. And she goes with Jimmy to kind of to give his formal confession, because they're gonna take it to trial, and there's all this stuff going on, and Chuck is pursuing legal action, and Jimmy is, I forget exactly what his stance is, but he's gonna admit that he broke in, and that he smashed the tape and everything, but he's not going to admit to what he actually said on the tape was. So there's all, and I can't remember if they reveal that in Chicanery, the 5th episode, or not. But either way, like, they're making steps, right? That the details aren't as, it doesn't really matter as far as this review goes. But Kim manages to kind of confront Chuck and Howard, and basically gets Chuck to admit that there is a second tape. She's like, well, you knew that Jimmy was going to come in and break that tape, so of course that's a duplicate, oh, no, so of course you have a duplicate. And Chuck's like, no, the duplicate was the one that Jimmy destroyed. I still have the original. And she's just like, got him, and she's just like, says to Jimmy, like, we got it. And it's, oh, what have they got? You're just like, oh. And it leads into episode 5, Chicanery, which is just a fucking phenomenal piece of television, a piece of cinema. It's all building to this. This is where the trial happens, where Chuck is gonna get Jimmy, from this confession. They're gonna play the confession tape and all this stuff, and they're gonna make sure that the courtroom is all the electronics have been left out. It's just the small neon exit sign. I know it's neon, but the lighted exit sign that needs to stay on for health and safety reasons, but it's a very small amount of electricity that it's emitting. And we see that, Kim has got something going, Jimmy's got something going, and he's got some guy who's right for the job, we don't know what. And then we see Chuck before the trial, and Huel Babineau comes in, and he looks a lot different than Breaking Bad. He's lost quite a bit of weight. He just bumps into Chuck. Oh, sorry about that. So what's going on here? And we have Howard on the stand, and then Chuck comes up, and what Jimmy has done is he's brought in Rebecca, flown her in, and kind of what he did was he got the pictures that Mike took of Chuck's apartment and how crazy it was, and sent them to Rebecca to say, Chuck needs your help, or he's just like pulling at our heartstrings, like there's something, because the big thing is that Rebecca, Chuck's wife, he never told her about his kind of sensitivity, and I can't remember when it was. I think it's it might be in season 2. I think it's in season 3. I'm not sure. I didn't note it down. We get a flashback of Chuck seeing his wife again. She's in town, like she's a musician, plays in an orchestra, I believe, and his condition has started, and Jimmy's there, and Jimmy's just like, he's doing everything he can to accommodate, his brother. And yeah, there's just these moments where you see that Jimmy loves Chuck, and just wants to do right by him, and it's such a complicated relationship, but it's brilliant. And her phone rings, and Chuck is like tensing up, like he makes up a story that the power went out, so they're using candles. But he snaps at Rebecca and acts like a complete prick towards her, and Jimmy's like, just tell her, this would solve it. And he's like, no, he doesn't want his ex-wife to think anything less of him because of this condition. And so she turns up, and he's rattled, but he also knows that that's designed to rattle him. So he's like, look, this ain't gonna, he's like, well, you may think that you've kind of shaken me up by this, but it's I'm here to tell the truth and all this stuff. And I could go into the beat by beats, as I guess that's all I'm really doing in these videos, and giving my brief commentary on them, but the way that Jimmy plays Chuck here is unbelievable. Just in terms of the dramatic tension that it builds up and releases. At certain points, I was getting goosebumps watching it, because it all just slots into place so well, and it's tragic for Chuck as well, and Jimmy's just like, talking about the electricity thing, and the judges like, this isn't pertinent to the, like, okay, we'll give you a little bit of leeway, but make it quick, McGill. And he keeps talking about it, and then Chuck's lawyer's like, this isn't about the mental well-being of my client, it's got nothing to do with it. And Jimmy basically spins the yarn that he just said what he thought Chuck wanted to hear. The whole thing about, yes, I switched the files, He said, I just said that just to make him feel better. I didn't actually do that. And then, he talks about, Chuck's sensitivity to electricity. And he's just like, isn't it true that, if you had a battery in your hand, you'd be able to feel it, right? And he's like, well, absolutely. It would be like searing pain. And he's like, why don't you reach into your breast pocket and see what you can find? And Chuck's like, oh, what's this? And the tricks. And he pulls it out, and it's a phone, and he just like throws it down. Like, what the hell? And I have to give credit to Patrick Fabian, who plays Howard, because he sells it like, oh my God, like the look of his eyes. There's so much going on, because it's this realization. It's just like, oh my God, like, is it like, oh, like, it just, you can feel all the things running through his head. And a brilliant but silent performance from Patrick Fabian in this part of the episode. And then, no, it's not a phone. It's not a phone. I missed that. It's a battery. So he throws the battery down. Jimmy takes out his phone, and he puts it into the phone, and he turns it on, and he shows it to everyone, and Chuck is like, no, it's trickery, it's fakery or whatever. And then Chuck just has been caught with his pants around his ankles, and I think he's realizing it himself even, that, maybe this is all in my head. And he just goes on off in this rant, and he's just ranting about Jimmy, and he's just like, he defecated in a sunroof, and this chicanery. And the camera is like slowly coming in on Chuck as he's unraveling, and he's almost like frothing at the mouth about how Jimmy must be stopped. You have to stop him. And then he catches himself and realizes he has flown off the handle, and the silence, and he realizes what's happened. And then he looks up, and we just see the exit sign looking down on it. Oh my God, it's amazing. Such a fantastic episode that really changes everything. And it's, like, Paige from Mesa Verde finds out about it later on, and she's like laughing about it with Kim, like chicanery. Or she says something that Chuck said, like, who talks like that? And she's like, wow, it's a good thing that you got that all sorted out. And Kim's really like cold with Paige after that, and she's like, look, I didn't enjoy that happened to Chuck. Like, Kim feels bad about it. She sees that Chuck has got these issues. She did it for Jimmy, like, she helped him out with it and planned all that stuff, but she doesn't feel good about it. And then moving on from there, I think this is where we're introduced to Crazy 8, Domingo, and now Nacho. Now that Tuco is out of the picture, Nacho is the one sat at the front receiving the money from the guys who are coming in, and Hector is behind him, kind of just reading the paper. That's his way of kind of holding court. And Domingo, Crazy 8, hasn't got his cut for the week or whatever, and Nacho's like, he's like, when you make it up next week. And Hector makes this very just quiet comment like, oh, so who's the boss then? And Nacho's like, oh, fuck. So he goes out, he grabs Crazy 8, brings him in, beats the fuck out of him, because he's got to assert that dominance, And Nacho is now in that place where he's stuck. And Nacho he's a very tragic character. He reminds me of Jesse a lot, where he's fallen into this life out of necessity, out of a lack of options, I guess. You could even say with Nacho that he had more prospects with his father and his father's business, and his father's such a straight up guy, but maybe Nacho just didn't want that life and just fell in with the wrong people. We don't really know too much about his backstory, but it is a tragic one, because for the majority of his story in Better Call Saul, he's trying to get out, and the more he tries to get out, the more deep he gets into Salamanca shit. That is the whole story of Nacho, unfortunately, right to the bitter end. Spoilers, I'm assuming that you've caught up with season 6. So and we get to Lydia. We get to see Gus or already like kind of scouting out the laundromat, and then he gets in the car and there's Lydia, and she's like, "Is it gonna work?" The meth lab. All these little pieces are starting to fall into place. Jimmy gets given a 1-year suspension for what he did, for breaking into Chuck's thing and destroying the tape and potentially destroying evidence, all this stuff. So Jimmy's suspended for a year, can't practice law. So this is quite a blow to him, but it's something that Kim's like, well, we can deal with it. The only problem is, I think there's a certain, there's a storyline where Jimmy had been running these ads and he paid for all this ad time for TV commercials. But now he can no longer practice law. So he tries to get the ads that he's paid for refunded, but they're like, it doesn't work like that. So you need to this wasn't nothing you can do, but he decides, well, I'll sell the airtime to someone else. So Jimmy goes off on this whole thing trying to sell people on like local businesses on using on buying the ads that he's giving. He's like, I'll shoot it for you. He's got the film crew with him and stuff, and it's some fun scenes, but like you just see him getting worn down by, he kind of won against Chuck, but like at the cost of his law license, but also like no money's coming in now, and everything's going wrong for Jimmy, and it's it's really battering him, and also he has the law office with Kim, and she's like, well, we should just leave it, because you're not going to be bringing in any money, so we'll just it's just a building, but he doesn't want to let go of the Wexler McGill partnership, so he's like, I'll keep paying you, I'll find a way, like we're not letting go of this. And she's like, I don't think he's like, just please, So he's trying to like sell these TV ads, and he kind of scams, Slippin' Jimmy style, these guys who run this music shop, and manages to kind of he pulls out a Jimmy move, but it's still he's got to do community service, and then he's really hamstrung in the second half of this season by things that he can or can't do. And as for Nacho, at this point in time, he is now looking to kill Hector, and Mike kind of advises against that, and but then they come up with a plan, and this is where the tricky thing comes, because Nacho is I'm not sure if that doesn't come yet, but Nacho eventually becomes involved with Gus, but Mike is involved with Gus, and Mike knows that Gus like wants Hector Salamanca, like it's really tricky. Like I think it's in the first time Gus meets with Mike, and he's like, you can't kill Hector Salamanca, like I don't want him to die at this moment in time. Like Gus has a very specific plan with what he wants to do with Hector, and Mike killing him is a no. So Mike knows that Gus doesn't want Hector dead. And then Nacho wants to kill. So this all this stuff. It works a lot better than the way that I'm very shoddily explaining it in this video. But it's just like everyone's out for Hector, but like in different ways, I suppose. Like Nacho just wants out, but he can't see that like it. And another thing, the reason that Nacho wants to kill Hector is because Hector's like, so what's your dad do, Nacho? It's like, oh, he just runs this, this little car business or whatever, this little mod shop or whatever it is, and Hector's like, well, that'd be a good cover for the, and Nacho's like, no, my dad's straight laced, he won't go for any of that, and Hector's like, well, and Hector turns up, and Nacho's dad is not happy, and he refuses the money from Hector, and Nacho's like, you gotta take this, like, and it's just so awkward, because you can see and feel the disappointment in Nacho's dad when he knows his son is still doing these things, and it's just like, it's heartbreaking, it really, and there's a few different scenes throughout the show where that kind of comes up, and Nacho is just like, my dad ain't gonna, and it's, so his Nacho feels like he needs to get out, but he also needs to keep his father safe, so Hector needs to die, and Hector has this medication that he takes when he gets stressed out, and so Nacho has the idea to put in placebos. So he ends up going to Daniel, the guy with the pharmaceuticals that from the first season, and get some empty shells that he can put some things in, and now he's planning his kind of in a way it's murdering Hector. In a way it's not, because he's just depriving him of the medication. But Mike is like, I think it's Mike who says to him, like, you can't just switch the meds, you need to switch them, then switch them back. Like, you really need to like clip all the branches on this one. And this you see Nacho kind of testing, kind of walking past Hector's coat jacket and just tossing in the bottle kind of haphazardly and stuff. But yeah, so this the second half, things are really ramping up for Nacho and Mike. And with Jimmy, it's just kind of he's kind of listless now, and it's like he doesn't know, he really wants to just get back to something normal. And then Chuck has been devastated by what happened in episode 5, and Kim feels bad about it. And Kim and Howard have a talk about Howard is such a fascinating character, because there's times where I really sympathize with him. There's times where I think he's a really good guy. There's times where I think he's a pompous prick, and it's always different. But he's always really interesting to watch, because there's always a little bit of an ulterior motive, and that ulterior motive might be good or bad, or not even bad or good, but like well-meaning or slightly nefarious. Like it's there's more of a line to it, and then also Jimmy, because he's just like, he's trying to find a way to make money so he can keep this Wexler and McGill building going. He tries to force the Sandpiper settlement, because once that goes through, he gets a big chunk of that money, because he's the one who brought it to HHM. So he's just waiting for that money, and if he gets that money, then he can comfortably continue paying rent and all that stuff for the joint building, even though he's not practicing law anymore. So he is now making a scheme of going to this old woman Irene, and trying to play her off against the other women, her friends, and saying like, well, look, she's got all this fancy stuff, and like he's just like, and I won't go into all the details because I can't even remember them, but like, he's trying to make Irene, like, and all the other women involved, to kind of and then no, because Irene is, for some reason, is the one woman, if she makes the call, then the settlement will go through. So she needs to be convinced not to, basically, so that HHM and Davison Maine can get more money by continuing to push this thing forward. And it is a valid point when, like, I think Jimmy and Kim at different points say that these old people, like, they don't have a lot of time to enjoy this money. What's an extra, $50, $100 or however much it would be. It's more about the lawyers who want more money, really. And so, in a way, Jimmy is kind of doing the right thing, but in reality, that he's just doing it for his own gain. And it's heartbreaking when you see that he ends up turning Irene's friends against her. And it's horrible, like, and he feels bad about it, and like guilty about it, and it's kind of, it's tricky, because you can see why he's doing it, and it would be a good outcome for them, but that at the heart of it, he's doing it for very selfish reasons, and it's kind of destroying the friendships of these old people who are like, near the end of their lives, and what do they have but their own friendship? And so it's kind of, it's the morality at play in a lot of these characters in this show, and Jimmy is always dancing on the line of morality, in good and bad scales, I think. One of the episodes, we get a flashback to Jimmy and his friend, what's his name from the first season? I've forgotten already. I know his name was Marco. Yeah, Marco. And they go into Jimmy's dad's old shop, and he looks into the ceiling, and there's a bunch of coins, and they're the coins that he will use to scam people. But he talks about how his old man was a pushover and stuff, and it's kind of a soft touch, I think he calls him. and it's and then he cons his community service guy in the main timeline. So like throughout the second half of this, Jimmy's really going all over the place. I love the bit where Jimmy is kind of going to Los Pollos Hermanos for Mike to see what that guy's doing. And he's like, okay, so I watched him and he did this and he didn't leave anything, and I looked in the bin and everything. He's like, so what are we doing next? And Mike's like, that's it. And Jimmy's like, wow, I freed up my morning for this. I love the idea that Jimmy just like loves going out with Mike and kind of like following people, like but you know, he has to do his community service, and like he's constantly trying to get something spinning, you know, and this community service thing is just it's impeding on his precious time. So he ends up conning the guy who runs a community service to let him go, which is and you just see again, it's the two things I really love in the show is seeing Mike doing his Mike shit, like the covert kind of like MacGyver stuff, and then Jimmy doing his like, you know, his superpower, which is the way he can use words, and it's just brilliant. But towards the end, and also Mike is then approaching Gus about, I have all this money that I stole from Hector when I, you know, hit one of his trucks, but I need to spend it. So can you launder it for me? So this is where Mike is becoming deeper entrenched with Gus. But as far as Chuck goes, I mean, he's really, you know, he's thinking like, is it all in my head? And he even goes out one night with the space blanket, and he goes out and it's like, you know, he's like phoning the doctor, and he gets the doctor from the first 2 seasons, I think, to come in and kind of try and help him, and he's getting better, and he's like he's looking at like objects, and he's like saying them out loud and saying the colors of them, and like red lamp and all this stuff, and he's like, yeah, he goes into a grocery store, and he's like, you know, just about making it, and you can see he's maybe making progress and realizing he can beat this thing, and then, you know, I don't know if it's right then, but Howard kind of pushes Chuck into retiring from HHM and says like, look, it's clearly time for you to step away, and Chuck is not happy about this, you know, and that's really, it's, again, you can see completely where Howard is coming from. You really can. But it's also like, is that the right thing? And I don't know, but it ultimately destroys Chuck. You know, he's kind of lost Jimmy at this point, and he's just, you know, all right, I'm being forced to retire. There's nothing I can do, and it's like that's everything to him, and everything is being taken away from him, and a lot of it is Jimmy's fault, you know, and Howard pushing him is kind of Howard's fault. But then again, you can see from their perspective why Chuck, it's tricky, because Chuck didn't make those mistakes with the Mesa Verde files. But Chuck is clearly dealing with mental issues with the electricity thing, which Jimmy kind of proved was in his head. And actually, like, Rebecca, she comes to Jimmy and Kim in their offices and kind of gives them a talking to. Like, she's like, you knew what you were doing there. Like, I think that's really cruel. Chuck is really going through, like, you know, some bad stuff. And Jimmy just has no remorse for Chuck at all. Like, just doesn't care. And Rebecca's like, I think he was right about you, you know. And you just see, because you see all the pieces, and you see the love between them, but you also see how they really, where they push each other's buttons in horrible ways, Jimmy and Chuck. And it's just so sad to see, because you can see a world in which they would have got on. You can see a world in where they just would have been brothers. But you know that in every step that this story takes, it just further separates them from that, and it's really tragic. Final episode, or actually towards the end of the 9th episode, Kim is just pushing herself to breaking point with Mesa Verde and falls asleep at the wheel. Incredibly cut sequence, like, it's really shocking. And she crashes, and then the next episode, she she's broken her arm, I think, and she's pretty banged up and pretty shaken and things, and, you know, Jimmy's kind of rattled and stuff. And everything funnels towards this last this last episode. I think in this one we have the flashback of Jimmy and a very young Jimmy and Chuck is reading Jimmy this story, which is just again hinting at like, and there is a little bit of energy there where Chuck is kind of like, still like the dominant force older brother type, but it's still like sweet that he's reading Jimmy a story, but again, you feel the divide between them at the same time. And yeah, I mean, a lot happens in this final episode. Obviously, Kim kind of recovering from this accident and realizing that she's pushed herself way to breaking point and needs to slow down because it's this massive job, the Mesa Verde stuff, and she's just trying to do it all herself, along with helping Jimmy. That's another thing. Back when she was going to help Jimmy in this case against Chuck, and Jimmy's like, but you got Mesa Verde, and she's like, it's fine, I'll do it, because she loves Jimmy, and she also could see some of the, even though she knew Jimmy was fucking around where he shouldn't have been, she kind of also saw the injustice in what Chuck was doing, and there's so much going on, but she, was just doing way too much, and luckily, for this story, it wasn't more serious, and she's pretty rattled by it, as you would expect. Then the whole Hector thing with Nacho, and you see Nacho trying to change the pills over, and he's fumbling and it's so stressful. Even though I know he gets away with it scot-free, it's so stressful seeing him trying to change the pills over, and he's fumbling with them and all that stuff, and it's taking ages, but he eventually gets it done. But then I don't think he takes the pills in the restaurant, and then there's a big meeting with Hector and Gus, and I think Balsa's there, and Nacho, and this is where Hector is pushed to his breaking limit, and I think it's when he's told that either he has to step back and Gus takes over, or Gus is going to be taking over a majority, and Hector is just like, he gets so mad and he starts coughing, and he reaches for his pills and he doesn't have the right ones, but he doesn't realize it because placebos have been swapped out, and he collapses. And Gus suspects that Nacho, like, Gus is just Gus, like, he just has that like seventh sense, and you can tell that he's thinking something's going on with this Nacho guy, and he's not very happy about it because he wants Hector alive. He doesn't want him to die. Jimmy realizes what he has to do with Irene, and there's that point where he's like, I really don't want to do it, but he goes in and with a headset, and he's kind of like he's doing like a bit of a, not literal song and dance, but he's kind of like I think he's like taking over like a chair yoga session with the old women, where they like just sat in chairs and doing very light yoga, and he's got the headset on and the microphone, and then he goes outside and he leaves the microphone on, and he basically says all this stuff and kind of reveals what he's been doing, but he makes it extra vicious so that those women know what happened and also would come back and be friends with Irene again, but it would cost him the kind of warm kind of relationships he built between them, but he severs that for doing the right thing and not continuing to play Irene around, because she's just miserable and really lonely without her friends, and so he did the right thing in the end, but it was at the cost of kind of coming out even more cruel than he probably was overall. And then what more is there to say but Jimmy and Chuck, the ending of this relationship. And it's, I think what happens in that last moment is I'm trying to, so Jimmy comes in to see Chuck, and I think Chuck is like cooking or something, and Jimmy's like, wow, like, and he comes in, and Chuck's like, what do you want to say, and Jimmy's trying to find some kind of, I guess, some common ground or some resolution, and Chuck drops one of the most like devastating lines I've seen in fiction, like, and in a way it's like, I feel like he said it just to get Jimmy out of there or whatever, because he's still like seething and kind of like also like maybe even, I don't know, terrified of what he would do with his life without his job at HHM. Chuck is, he's not well. But the line he says to Jimmy as he walks up to him, and he says, "The truth is, Jimmy, I just never really cared for you that much." And he goes and sits back down again, and Jimmy's got nothing and just leaves. And then we have this extended sequence where Chuck, as soon as Jimmy's gone, is now like turning off the electricity, and he's like throwing things out, and then realizing that the little like electricity meter on the outside of the house is still just ticking slightly. So he's like trying to find what is this thing in the house, and then he's just like true, talk like conversation style, like he's tearing his house apart trying to find what is this piece of electricity, and he can't find it. And after a day or two, it's kind of inferred. He's sat there with his lantern on the table. A bit of stubble has grown in, and he's just like got the space blanket around himself, and he just kicks the table. He kicks it, and then we cut outside of the house, and the house goes up in flames, and that's the end of the show, is Chuck killing himself. And it's just brutal, because that was the last thing he ever said to Jimmy. It was like, the truth is, I just don't care for you that much. Absolutely devastating. And that's season 3 of Better Call Saul. It's a great one. It really is. And I forget, when was the insurance thing? No, that was in season 4. We'll get to that. So, what more is there to say? I think it's, for me, I think top to bottom, probably season 2, season 3 are kind of the best of the best. I think there are moments in season 4 and 5 and 6 that are bigger and maybe more superior, more dramatic than the first 3 seasons, but top to bottom, with all the things slotting into place and things building up, I just think that season 2 and 3 are fantastic. Obviously the first season I loved so much more on a rewatch, but yeah, there's just a bit more of a purity to, I don't know, you can look at the beginning and say that it's the best because it's, setting everything up so brilliantly, but I think once one foot gets in front of the other and things start rolling forward in season 2 and 3, and the Breaking Bad cameos are ramping up, but in ways that make sense, and they don't feel like attractions, they feel like parts of the story. That's the stuff that I really like. And I think season 3 is when Mike is roped into kind of doing some kind of carpentry, not even carpentry, I wish my brain worked better. What would you call it? He's just like laying down concrete. What would you call that? It's not gardening, it's labor, I don't know. Masonry, stone masonry, I don't know. But Mike is roped into helping lay down cement for some church project. And he gets chatting to this woman. And there's kind of a potential feels like a bit of a romance there between him and this. It feels a bit Jackie Brownish, just kind of nice. And, you don't often see people of that age having kind of romances on TV or in movies, but it doesn't really develop too far. But she tells Mike the story of, and it might not be, I think it's in season 3. If it's not, then I'm talking about everything anyway. And she talks about how her husband had died, and she's in the grief group that Mike goes to with his daughter-in-law, Stacy. And this woman talks about how if her husband just disappeared one day, he went out hiking and that was it. And in my head, I'm like, oh man, I wish Mike would just like Mike this situation and go and like find the body. And of course he fucking does. Like I think he figures out, I can't remember if he like, well, it isn't explained, but I think I read up about it that he had figured out, I can't remember, I've already forgotten. I'm sure there is something that points to how he knew where to look. And I believe it was a Salamanca hit, or like he got in the way or something. And this is all stuff I've read online that was people putting together the pieces or something. But you see Mike kind of out with a metal detector and he finds the body and stuff, but obviously doesn't tell this woman that. But it's just, Mike's the fixer, like he's always fixing things. And as soon as this woman mentioned like the tragic, she just said, I just wish I knew, and so of course he has to kind of do that for her, which is just showing that Mike, even though by the time we see him Breaking Bad, he is a bit of a stone cold killer in a way. He won't hesitate to shoot Walt at one point, but there was a lot of like respect and honor and warmth in Mike, even if it's especially with warmth, it's hard for him to show it to anyone but his family. But yeah, I like that little side. I wish it had gone a little bit further, but they seem to kind of peter out after a certain episode in season 4 when he has an outburst at one of the grief meetings. Anyway, so I think that's pretty much it. You know, it was sad to see Chuck go, but it felt like he had to at some point because, you know, how could Saul Goodman really exist with Chuck in the world? But we got 3 great seasons with him, and Michael McKean was just fantastic, and it was so great to see their relationship, you know, continue to develop and devolve and spiral as the 3 seasons went on. But Chicanery is just a powerhouse, like what an episode. And his final moments are just heartbreaking. And of course, Chuck's death looms large, massively over season 4. So I think that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.